Can you believe this? Alex Stepney actually dislocated his jaw just from yelling at his teammates. Yep, he got injured by shouting too hard. Imagine being so fired up, giving your team an earful, and suddenly, bam, your own jaw gives out. That has to be one of the wildest ways to get hurt. Alex Stepney wasn't just your average goalkeeper. He was a fierce competitor, and sometimes that fire got the best of him. One of the craziest stories about him happened in 1975 during a match against Birmingham City. Stepney was so frustrated with his defenders that he started yelling at them, trying to get them organized. But in the heat of the moment, he shouted so hard that he actually dislocated his jaw. Yeah, you heard that right. He injured himself just by yelling. Imagine that. You're trying to get your team in shape, and suddenly you're the one who needs medical attention. It wasn't exactly a career-threatening injury, but it became one of the most bizarre and memorable moments in football history. But that wasn't the only time Stepney's emotions got the better of him. Back in 1968, during the Intercontinental Cup against Boca Juniors, things got seriously heated. The match itself was already intense, filled with rough tackles and aggressive play. At one point, Stepney lost his cool and straight up punched an opposing player. It was a moment of pure frustration, and while the fans might have enjoyed the drama, his manager, Matt Busby, definitely did not. Busby was known for being strict with discipline, and he gave Stepney a serious warning, making it clear that kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated again. Now, some might say Stepney's fiery attitude got him into trouble, but you can't deny that it was also a huge part of his success. He wasn't just a player who showed up and did his job. He was a leader, a fighter, and a guy who played with everything he had. And that passion paid off in the biggest way possible. In 1968, he played a crucial role in Manchester United's historic European Cup victory, making them the first English club to ever win the tournament. His incredible save against Eusebio in the final is still talked about today. It was one of those moments that defined his career and cemented his place in football history. But Stepney's success didn't stop there. He was also a key part of the Manchester United squad that won the First Division title in 1967, proving that his contributions went far beyond just one legendary night. His dedication, intensity, and yes, even his occasional bursts of anger made him one of the most memorable goalkeepers of his era. Now let's take a look at the career of a man so dedicated to the game that he willingly endured injuries for it. Stepney's journey to becoming one of Manchester United's most iconic goalkeepers wasn't exactly smooth sailing. In fact, his early career was filled with setbacks, challenges, and unexpected turns. Born in Mitcham, Surrey, Stepney had big dreams of making it as a professional footballer. But like many young players, he had to deal with rejection first. He had trials with Fulham, hoping to secure a spot at the club, but things didn't go as planned. Fulham didn't see enough potential in him, and he wasn't offered a place in their squad. For some players, that kind of rejection can be devastating. It can make you question whether you're good enough. But Stepney wasn't the type to give up that easily. Instead of letting the setback define him, he kept pushing forward. He joined Tooting and Mitcham United, a non-league club, where he continued working on his game, determined to prove himself. It was at Tooting and Mitcham that he finally got the break he was looking for. Scouts from Millwall spotted him and were impressed by what they saw. In 1963, Millwall signed him as an amateur, giving him the opportunity to train with a professional club. At first, it was just a chance to get his foot in the door, but it didn't take long for the coaching staff to realize that Stepney had serious potential. In fact, within just 2 months of joining, Millwall made him a professional. That's how quickly he proved himself. He went from an unproven amateur to a full-time professional in record time. Once he got his shot at Millwall, Stepney made sure to make the most of it. He became a regular starter and quickly established himself as a key player for the club. For almost 3 full seasons, he was ever present in the squad, rarely missing a game. In total, he made 158 appearances for Millwall, showing impressive consistency and reliability between the posts. The only time he missed a game was the very last match of the 1965-66 season. That kind of durability is rare, especially for goalkeepers, who often face tough challenges and physical demands. During his time at Millwall, Stepney's performances caught the attention of England selectors. He was called up to represent the England under-23 team, earning 3 caps at that level. It was a huge moment for him. It proved that he was on the right track and that people were starting to take notice of his talent. Representing your country, even at the youth level, is always a big deal, and for Stepney, it was a sign that bigger opportunities were coming his way. And that's exactly what happened in May 1966. Chelsea came knocking, and Stepney made a major career move, signing for the London club for a fee of £50,000. It was a big step up for him, and he was eager to prove himself at the highest level. Chelsea's manager at the time, Tommy Docherty, had an interesting plan for Stepney. He wanted to rotate him with the club's other top goalkeeper, Peter Bonetti, alternating between the two every week. It was an unusual strategy, but Docherty believed it would help both keepers stay fresh and competitive. However, things didn't quite work out that way. Just 3 months after joining Chelsea, Stepney was on the move again. He had only made one appearance for the club before Manchester United came calling. United had been struggling with their goalkeeping situation. Their legendary keeper, Harry Gregg, was dealing with injuries that had effectively ended his career. Meanwhile, Matt Busby, United's legendary manager, wasn't convinced that the other goalkeepers at the club, Pat Dunn and David Gaskell, were the right long-term solution. Busby saw something in Stepney that made him believe he was the right man for the job. He was confident enough in his abilities that he was willing to break records to sign him. In what was then a British record fee for a goalkeeper, United paid £55,000 to bring Stepney to Old Trafford. That's how highly they rated him. They were willing to spend big money to secure his services. Stepney didn't waste any time making an impact at United. He was thrown straight into the action and made his debut in a high-stakes match against Manchester City at Old Trafford. It was a tense derby, with both teams eager to claim bragging rights. But Stepney rose to the occasion. He kept a clean sheet in his very first game, helping United secure a 1-0 victory thanks to a first-half goal from the great Dennis Law. It was the perfect start to his United career, and it showed everyone, fans, teammates, and critics alike, that he was ready for the challenge. By the time the 1966-67 season rolled around, Stepney had fully settled into his role as Manchester United's #1 goalkeeper. He had proven himself to be a reliable and commanding presence between the posts, and the team was determined to reclaim the First Division title. With legends like George Best, Bobby Charlton, and Dennis Law leading the attack, United had one of the most exciting squads in English football. But having a great attacking force wasn't enough. You needed a strong foundation at the back, and Stepney provided exactly that. Throughout the season, Stepney was a rock in goal, keeping clean sheets, making crucial saves, and organizing his defense with authority. His ability to read the game and stay calm under pressure made him an invaluable part of the team. Thanks to a combination of solid defense and attacking brilliance, Manchester United finished the season as champions, securing the First Division title. Winning the league was always special, but this victory was even more significant because it meant United had qualified for the European Cup, the biggest club competition in football. No English team had ever won it before, and now Stepney and his teammates had the chance to make history. The 1967-68 European Cup campaign was filled with high-stakes matches, intense battles, and unforgettable moments. As United made their way through the tournament, Stepney played a crucial role in keeping the team's dream alive. Game after game, he made vital saves, helping United progress through each round. By the time they reached the final, the excitement was at an all-time high. The match was set to be played at Wembley Stadium, and their opponents were Benfica, the dominant Portuguese club led by the legendary Eusebio. Benfica were an incredibly strong team, and they had already won the European Cup twice before. United knew they were in for the fight of their lives. The final itself was a tense and hard-fought battle. United took the lead through Bobby Charlton, but Benfica fought back and equalized, making it 1-1. With time running out in normal play, United's dream of winning the European Cup was hanging by a thread. Then came one of the most unforgettable moments in Stepney's career. Eusebio, one of the greatest strikers the game has ever seen, suddenly found himself with a golden opportunity to score. He was inside the penalty area, just a few yards from goal, and he had a clear shot. The entire stadium must have thought the ball was about to hit the back of the net. But Stepney had other plans. As Eusebio fired his shot, Stepney reacted with lightning speed, throwing himself into position and making an unbelievable close-range save. The ball didn't go in. The crowd was in shock. But what happened next made the moment even more legendary. Instead of reacting with frustration or anger, Eusebio, one of the fiercest competitors in football, did something truly extraordinary. He stopped, looked at Stepney, and started clapping. He was so amazed by the save that he felt it deserved applause. Imagine that, one of the world's best strikers pausing in the middle of a European Cup final just to acknowledge a goalkeeper's brilliance. Stepney, staying focused, quickly threw the ball back into play, and the game continued. That save kept United in the match, and soon after, in extra time, United took control. They scored 3 more goals, finishing the game 4-1 and making history as the first English club to win the European Cup. It was a moment of pure glory, and Stepney's save was one of the defining highlights of the victory. While Stepney's save against Eusebio was one of the greatest moments of his career, there was another goal involving him that was unforgettable for a very different reason. At the start of the 1967-68 season, Stepney was in goal for the FA Charity Shield match against Tottenham Hotspur at Old Trafford. The game itself was a thrilling encounter, filled with goals and excitement. But what made it truly unique was the way Tottenham took the lead. Stepney found himself facing a situation that most goalkeepers never experience, conceding a goal to an opposing goalkeeper. And not just any goal, but a freakishly bizarre one. Tottenham's keeper, Pat Jennings, was known for having a powerful kick, but no one could have predicted what would happen next. As United were pushing forward, Jennings gathered the ball and decided to launch it up the field with a massive punt. It seemed like a routine clearance, something goalkeepers do all the time. But then, something strange happened. The ball flew high through the air, bouncing just in front of Stepney. Normally, that wouldn't be a problem. Goalkeepers deal with long clearances all the time. But this bounce was different. The ball took an awkward, unexpected leap off the turf, completely catching Stepney off guard. Before he could react, it sailed over his head and into the net. A goal from one goalkeeper to another. It was the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a park match, not at Old Trafford in an official game. The crowd was stunned, and even the players couldn't believe what had just happened. But to Stepney's credit, he didn't let the bizarre goal shake him. He stayed composed, and United fought back. The game ended in a thrilling 3-3 draw, with United's goals coming from Bobby Charlton, who scored twice, and Dennis Law. Stepney was undoubtedly a top-class goalkeeper, one of the best of his generation, but his time with the England national team was filled with frustration rather than glory. Despite his incredible performances for Manchester United, including his legendary role in their 1968 European Cup triumph, he found himself far down the pecking order when it came to international selection. Why? Because he played in an era where England was blessed with an abundance of goalkeeping talent. At the time, England's #1 spot was untouchable. Gordon Banks was the undisputed first-choice goalkeeper. Banks wasn't just any goalkeeper. He was a once-in-a-generation talent, the kind of player who could win games single-handedly. Best known for his iconic save against Pelé in the 1970 World Cup, Banks was the rock in England's defense and a key reason why the Three Lions won the 1966 World Cup. If you were a goalkeeper in England during that time, the reality was simple. If Banks was fit, you weren't playing. But Banks wasn't the only obstacle in Stepney's way. England had a wealth of goalkeeping options, including Chelsea's Peter Bonetti, Everton's Gordon West, and the experienced Ron Springett from Sheffield Wednesday. This intense competition made it incredibly difficult for Stepney to break into the national team, no matter how well he performed for Manchester United. Despite being overlooked for much of his career, Stepney finally got his chance in May 1968 when England coach Alf Ramsey selected him in the squad for the final stages of the European Championships. With England having already qualified, Ramsey needed backup options for Banks, and Stepney, along with Gordon West, was brought into the squad. It was a huge opportunity for Stepney. He wasn't expected to play, but being part of the England setup was a major step forward. Then, just 7 days before the biggest game of his club career, the European Cup final against Benfica, Stepney made his England debut. It was a friendly match against Sweden, and England secured a comfortable 3-1 victory. For Stepney, it must have been a surreal moment. One week, he was winning his first international cap, representing his country at the highest level. The next, he was on the biggest stage in club football, helping Manchester United win their first ever European Cup. Despite not playing regularly for England, Stepney remained on Ramsey's radar as the team prepared for their World Cup title defense in 1970. Since England had won the previous tournament in 1966, they didn't have to go through the qualification process, allowing Ramsey to focus on selecting the best possible squad. Stepney wasn't getting game time, but Ramsey still included him in his preliminary squad of 27 players. Alongside him were Banks, Bonetti, and a young, uncapped goalkeeper named Peter Shilton. At this point, Stepney had only played one game for England, and it seemed like his international career might never take off. When the final 22-man squad was announced, Stepney had made the cut. Shilton, despite his obvious talent, was sent home. That meant Stepney was officially going to Mexico for the World Cup, an incredible achievement in itself. However, there was one major problem. He was still third choice behind Banks and Bonetti. Being the third choice goalkeeper at a World Cup is a bittersweet experience. On one hand, you're part of one of the greatest tournaments in football, representing your country on the biggest stage. On the other, you know that unless something truly dramatic happens, you're not going to play. Stepney spent most of the tournament watching from the sidelines, knowing that his chances of getting onto the pitch were slim. But then, in the quarterfinals against West Germany, something dramatic did happen. Gordon Banks, England's unbeatable number one, suddenly fell ill with a severe case of food poisoning. It was a shocking and unexpected turn of events, and it meant that England had to play without their best goalkeeper. This was the moment Stepney had been waiting for. With Banks unable to play, Stepney was finally in contention for a World Cup start. But Ramsey had a decision to make. He could either go with Stepney, who had only one international cap, or Peter Bonetti, who was slightly more experienced with 6 caps to his name. In the end, Ramsey chose Bonetti. Stepney could do nothing but watch from the bench. The match itself turned into one of the most heartbreaking moments in England's football history. England had a 2-0 lead and seemed to be in control. But without Banks, their defense was vulnerable. West Germany mounted a stunning comeback, scoring 3 goals to win 3-2. Bonetti had a nightmare performance, struggling to deal with West Germany's attack. Many fans and experts have since debated whether Stepney should have been given the nod instead. Would he have made a difference? Could he have helped England hold on to their lead? We'll never know. One of the most famous moments of Stepney's World Cup experience came after the match, and it had nothing to do with playing. Banks, still recovering from his illness, hadn't been able to watch the game. When Stepney went to check on him in his hotel room, Banks asked about the score. But Stepney, knowing how painful the result was, didn't say a word. Instead, he simply held up 3 fingers on one hand and 2 on the other, signaling the 3-2 defeat. Banks, devastated, could only shake his head. It was a simple yet powerful moment. Stepney, the loyal teammate, delivering heartbreaking news to the man who had kept England's dream alive so many times before. Stepney's international career ended with just 1 England cap to his name. It's a number that doesn't do justice to his talent and achievements. Had he played in a different era, when England didn't have a world-class goalkeeper like Banks, he would have likely been a regular starter. Instead, he had to settle for being a backup, always close but never quite getting his chance. He then returned to his peak form at Manchester United, but things were tougher this time. The early 1970s were a tough period for Manchester United, a club that had been so dominant in the 1960s. By 1974, United faced the unthinkable, relegation to the second division. It was a catastrophic season for the club, with performances that fell well below expectations. Despite the team's struggles, Stepney continued to be a key figure in goal, but even he couldn't prevent the inevitable. The team's decline culminated in relegation, marking a low point in United's history. What made this situation even more unusual, however, was Stepney's ability to contribute in a way that no one would expect from a goalkeeper, by scoring goals. Yes, Stepney, the man between the sticks, scored not 1, but 2 goals that season. both from penalties. It's not something you'd typically see from someone in his position, but Stepney's ability to take penalties made him the leading scorer for the team at Christmas that year. Imagine that. A goalkeeper, usually the last person to be scoring, leading the team's goal-scoring chart. It was a strange and somewhat ironic twist in a season full of disappointment. During this season, Stepney was replaced for half the campaign by Jimmy Rimmer. The team's struggles were mounting, and under the management of Tommy Docherty, it was clear that a change was needed. Docherty was a man with a vision, and the squad was in need of a revamp. Despite this mid-season shakeup, Stepney would go on to see the resurgence of Manchester United, even though he was facing some significant personal challenges. After relegation, Manchester United went into the 1974-75 season with one goal in mind: promotion back to the First Division. It was a tough task, but with the leadership of Tommy Docherty, the team fought their way back, finishing the season as Division Two champions. For Stepney, this was a massive achievement after the heartbreak of relegation. He was part of a team that showed resilience and determination, qualities that were needed to rise above the adversity they'd faced. Yet the challenges didn't stop there. Stepney, despite his experience, faced some serious injury problems, and one in particular stood out as both bizarre and frustrating. During a match, Stepney managed to dislocate his jaw while shouting instructions at his defenders. It was a freak accident, but it perfectly captured the intense and sometimes frustrating nature of his leadership style. Stepney was the kind of goalkeeper who never held back when it came to communicating with his team, and in this case, his passion and fiery nature led to an injury that seemed almost comical in its absurdity. Nonetheless, Stepney was a warrior, and he would return to lead his team again once he had recovered. As Manchester United continued to rebuild, one of the key elements of the team was a new generation of players. Docherty had made some excellent signings, and the youth system was beginning to produce some exciting talent. For Stepney, this presented both a challenge and an opportunity. He was no longer the young goalkeeper with everything ahead of him. He was now the seasoned pro, the experienced head among a group of young players who needed guidance and leadership. During this period, Stepney found himself competing for a regular spot in the starting lineup with Paddy Ruch, who had arrived at the club with high hopes of securing the #1 position. Despite the competition, Stepney's experience was invaluable to the team, especially during high-pressure moments. One of those high-pressure moments came in the 1976 FA Cup final, a match that would ultimately shape the history of Manchester United. United faced Southampton in the final, and despite being the higher division team, United went into the match as the underdogs. The team was full of youthful energy, but also full of nerves, and Stepney was the only player on the field with previous Wembley experience. The final was an intense affair, but Southampton, despite being a division below, played with the calm and composure of a more seasoned side. Their victory was sealed by a goal from Bobby Stokes, which came late in the game. Stepney couldn't do much to stop it. Stokes' shot was low and crossed the goal at a difficult angle, leaving Stepney with little chance to react. The United players claimed the goal was offside, but the referee disagreed, and Southampton's 1-0 win left United's dreams of FA Cup glory dashed. While Stepney couldn't prevent the loss, his presence on the field, along with his leadership, made a big difference to the young United squad. The experience of playing in a final like this would prove to be invaluable in the years that followed. Despite the disappointment of 1976, Stepney's fortunes would change in the 1977 FA Cup final. Manchester United faced their fierce rivals, Liverpool, a team that was on the verge of an unprecedented treble. Liverpool had already won the league title that season and were poised to take home the European Cup just days after the FA Cup final. United, on the other hand, were fighting to secure silverware and restore their former glory. The final was a thrilling encounter, with both teams battling it out in front of a packed Wembley crowd. United took the lead thanks to a goal from Stuart Pearson, but Liverpool equalized through a bullet shot by Jimmy Case. Stepney managed to get a hand to it, but the power of the shot meant he couldn't stop it from finding the back of the net. It was a blow, but United didn't let it break their spirit. Jimmy Greenhoff quickly restored United's lead, and this time, Stepney was crucial in preserving that lead. With Liverpool piling on the pressure in search of another equalizer, Stepney made a series of important saves to keep United ahead. His leadership and composure in the final moments were key to United securing a 2-1 victory, and they won the FA Cup for the first time since 1963. For Stepney, the win was sweet redemption. He had been through some tough times with the club, but this victory was a reflection of his resilience. He was the only player from the European Cup winning side of 1968 still at the club, and this FA Cup victory marked a beautiful full circle in his career. Stepney's triumph in the 1977 FA Cup final was also significant for another reason. He was the last player to remain at the club from the legendary Matt Busby era. Busby, who had guided United through some of the club's most successful years, had retired years earlier, and Stepney was the final link to that era of United's history. His presence on the pitch in 1977, leading a new generation of players to victory, was symbolic of the continuity at Manchester United. As the years went by, Stepney's role at Manchester United gradually changed. Despite his incredible achievements and record-setting performances, he was no longer an automatic choice in the starting lineup. The 1977-78 season saw him play in just 23 of the team's 42 league matches, a significant drop from his earlier years of near-constant action. It was clear that a new era was beginning for both Stepney and the club. Stepney had been a pillar of Manchester United for so many seasons. His consistency, leadership, and skill in goal were unquestioned. However, by the time he reached the latter stages of his career, the team was evolving and there were younger players emerging who were being given opportunities to step up. Even though Stepney's performances still warranted him being a key player, the team had changed and the dynamics were different. This shift in his playing time didn't lessen his value to the club, but it did mark the beginning of a new chapter in his life. After a storied and legendary career at Manchester United, Stepney played his final game for the club in April 1978. He had made a remarkable 546 appearances for United over a period that spanned more than a decade, and it was clear that he would leave behind an unmatched legacy. His departure from United marked the end of an era, but it also signaled the start of a new adventure. Stepney made the move to the United States, joining the Dallas Tornado in the North American Soccer League. This was a significant shift for Stepney, as he moved from the intense pressure of top-flight English football to the growing, yet somewhat different, football scene in America. The NASL was a competitive league, but it didn't have the same level of scrutiny and attention that European football enjoyed. It was a fresh start for Stepney, and he embraced the opportunity to continue playing professionally before finally retiring for good in 1980. During his career with United, Stepney had become known for his incredible consistency. One of his most impressive records was his clean sheet tally. He kept a total of 175 clean sheets, which is a testament to his incredible shot-stopping ability and leadership in goal. In a career spanning well over a decade, Stepney's ability to maintain such a high level of performance was extraordinary, and this statistic alone solidified his place as one of the greats of the club. But it wasn't just his clean sheets that stood out. Stepney was also known for his incredible streak of consecutive appearances. He made a club record 92 consecutive appearances for United, a record that stood for many years before eventually being broken by Steve Coppell. This streak was a reflection of Stepney's dedication, reliability, and ability to avoid injuries. He was a fixture in the United lineup, always ready to take on the next challenge, week in and week out. And of course, there were the goals. Although it's not something we typically associate with goalkeepers, Stepney scored not one, but 2 goals during his time at Manchester United. Those goals were a rare sight for any goalkeeper, and it was a source of pride for Stepney to remain United's top-scoring goalkeeper, a title he still holds to this day. Aside from Peter Schmeichel, who scored in a UEFA Cup match in the 1995-96 season, no other Manchester United goalkeeper has managed to score in a competitive match after World War II. Stepney's goals weren't just memorable, they were a reflection of his all-around commitment and versatility as a player. After leaving United and his time with the Dallas Tornado, Stepney didn't leave football entirely. Instead, he continued to play for a while longer at a non-league level, taking on a role at Altrincham in the early 1980s. Altrincham, at the time, were competing in the Alliance Premier League, which was essentially the highest level of non-league football in England. Stepney, even though he was nearing the end of his career, still had plenty to offer on the pitch. He helped Altrincham win the Alliance Premier League title in 1981, a moment of success that added to his already impressive trophy cabinet. However, Altrincham's efforts to gain promotion to the Football League were thwarted by the re-election system. Despite winning the title, the majority of the league's members voted against allowing Altrincham to join the Football League, effectively ending Stepney's hopes of making a professional comeback. It was a disappointing end to his playing career, but it didn't diminish the impact he had made in the lower leagues. He had brought his vast experience and winning mentality to the team, and they had benefited from it. After retiring from playing, Stepney transitioned into coaching and mentoring, taking on a role as a goalkeeping coach. His vast knowledge of the game and his experiences at the highest levels made him an ideal fit for this kind of role. Stepney's coaching career included a stint at Manchester City in the 2001 season, where he worked with the club's goalkeepers. Even though he had spent much of his playing career at Manchester United, Stepney was more than willing to share his expertise with players at City, demonstrating his professionalism and willingness to contribute to the development of the next generation of goalkeepers. In addition to his coaching, Stepney also found success in another area: public speaking. His rich experiences in football, combined with his natural charisma and sense of humor, made him a sought-after after-dinner speaker. He was known for telling captivating stories from his playing days, offering insights into the inner workings of the game, and providing anecdotes from a career that spanned some of the most iconic moments in English football history. Stepney also took on another role in the world of media, hosting the Legends Football Phone-In on 105.4 Century Radio in Manchester. The show, which replaced Mickey Thomas, was a platform for Stepney to connect with fans, share his knowledge, and engage in lively discussions about the game. His experience as a player and coach made him an ideal host for a show that focused on football, providing listeners with expert insights and entertaining conversation. Throughout his post-playing career, Stepney continued to stay connected with football in various ways, showing that his love for the game never truly waned. From coaching to public speaking and media work, he found new outlets to share his passion for football and stay involved in the sport that had given him so much. And that's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update on our future content. We've got plenty more coming your way. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Take care.